What's up, everybody? It's Corey here with Good Evening Tech, and today I'm going to show you how to install Laravel on a Mac operating system computer. Laravel, I've used it for a long time of me learning web development. It's definitely an awesome system to use. If you ever hear that PHP can get kind of messy or it doesn't feel right, Laravel helps solve a lot of problems that are out there. First thing we're going to do is go to their website. This, out of every framework I've used besides ones provided by Microsoft, this one has the best documentation. I've been able to search on it and find pretty much anything that I needed. So if you're looking for a framework to pick up and one that's very employable, look at Laravel, because any question you have can probably be answered by the documentation. So first thing I'm going to do, click on this, and I'm going to go right to here. So all of these instructions up here, if you want to read through it, they're Docker installations of Laravel, so it creates its own virtual machine on your computer. If that's something you want to do, awesome. That's not something that I want to do. So I like doing it the little bit older way, but that other way up there is perfectly fine. So let's go down here. So I'm going to use the Composer install. If you don't have Composer on your Mac device, what I recommend, search for Homebrew. Now, Homebrew is a package manager for Apple. There are other ways to install Composer. They have instructions on how to do it through Symfony and Composer's websites, but I like using Homebrew because it makes everything very easy. So one of the big things that you're going to need installed on your device is PHP. So if you install Homebrew, you just run that command in your terminal. It'll install itself. You can go here, install PHP. All you do is run that command, it'll install it. Once you've installed PHP, you can install Composer. To make sure that both are installed, what we're going to do, let's go over here, pull up our terminal, and first thing you want to run, PHP version. I have PHP 8 on this, and you can run Composer version. Okay, so both of them are installed. All right, going over here. So the top one is Composer Create Project, and you just run through this. We'll run through it in a second. But down here, if you want to install Laravel at a global level, you can do it with this command. For my MacBook, this is the fourth fresh install I've had for Mac OS on this and my second Mac. I've never gotten this to work correctly without having to go through and create a bash script that adds it to my path every single time. So for the work that it does, it's not really something that I recommend. If you want to go through the bash command and learn how your path works on your Apple or Linux or Unix device, this is a perfect opportunity to learn. But I like just doing this because you'll use the Laravel create every time you make an application. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into documents, cd into dev, cd into PHP. All right. So once you get to the directory that you want to go into, what you're going to do is run Composer, create project, Laravel, and then the next thing is the name that you want to give your application. So I'm going to name it My First App. You'll hit enter. It's going to run through all the things that it needs to. And once it's done here, we'll start it up, and then I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code, and you can see exactly what's going on in it. Installation takes a little bit because there is a lot to this. Laravel is a framework that has pretty much anything that I could want in a framework. So once we're in there, it's perfectly installed. Application, or CD, into My First App. Now, Laravel uses something called Artisan. You'll see this word, you see it right here in the documentation. Artisan is PHP's command to do everything. Not PHP, sorry, Laravel's command to do everything. So it's a custom script they have set up to let you create database tables, to create tests, to create components, to do all these things. So a lot of what you need to do to create objects inside of Laravel is handled by Artisan for you. But we'll run PHP artisan serve. It'll run our server at this address. We'll grab this, go over here, type that in, and look at that. It's working right there. So this is what the installation looks like the first time you load it. I'm going to close out of that server, and I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code and pull it up here, and then we're going to open that file together. Sorry, folder. Open it here. Open documents, dev, PHP, my first app. Open that up. All right. So a lot of folders here that you see on the side. The first one I want to talk about that I think is an awesome thing that's included in this is the .env. So this file holds a lot of variables that you can access anywhere in your application through Laravel. So if you want to set up a certain key or something that's very important that you're going to use throughout your app, you can put it inside of here and it will use it. So like this, the database connection. You can store all the information in here and it will use it throughout the app. Now the get ignore down here, you'll see that it doesn't keep the .env. So if this is an app that you're using with somebody else, what you do is whatever you modify in this .env, you can put over in here and just give an example at what they should do. So if you add some keys or you take some away, you can put them all in here. So that's it for the .env. It's just a great place to put variables that you'll use all over the place. Now, as we go down, folders that you'll use, first one is the HTTP folder, the controllers. We'll open one up here. Make my font just a little bit bigger so you can see it a little bit better. We'll make this window just a little bit bigger. All right, so controllers, this is the base class of it. So this is what's going to be used throughout all of it to create your own controllers. Now, Laravel is an MVC framework. It uses model views and controllers. So a controller is what handles when somebody makes a request, what is it going to do? Models, they have one made for us already. It's just a user. You look through this user object, it's a great way to model data afterwards. It's extending an authenticatable class. It's just something Laravel has built in. Now, as you go down here, fillable. So this is information that can be mass assignable. So if you make a giant table of information that you want to test out your server with, whatever you put in fillable can be assigned through that. Hidden, so if you grab the object, this is stuff that it just won't project itself out there. And never really use cast, so it's just something you have to read the documentation for. Bootstrap, I never really use too much. Configure, so in here, all of these files, it can seem overloading at just how many files there are here. When you're creating a Laravel project, you won't open a lot of these until it comes time. So if you're trying to send out mail, this is the thing that handles mail for you. And instead of trying to learn everything at once, when it comes time to it, you open up the Laravel documentation and read through how it works, and they break everything down super well. Database, this is an awesome part of Laravel. So it does use NPM. It uses a couple NPM libraries to help you set up stuff inside of here. One that I love is factories. So if to use factories like this, you'll see Faker here. You need to install NPM and you need to run NPM install in your terminal. But this will let you generate information so that you can test out your server, test out how everything works. If you have 100 users, what's going to happen with those 100? All of these things, you can set up your own factories. You can modify these factories. And I mean, yeah, it's just a great tool to have for unit testing, so you don't have to go find random data. You can make it yourself. Migrations, so this is something that Laravel generates for you. It generates the file, but you actually have to go in and fix it yourself. But Laravel has an ORM, an object relational model. It's called Eloquent, and it handles a lot of SQL for you so that you don't have to write raw SQL. I'll show you how those work in a second. Seeders work alongside of factories. So you create the factory, and when you want to seed your database, you throw it in here, just how this is. So if you uncommented this and the database was set up, it would create 10 user objects through the factory. We go here, the public folder. So this is what's going to face the internet. All these files will be shrouded when you go through Laravel's how to deploy. It shows you how to set up an Apache script to basically route everything to the index.php. This one file, it handles all the routing for you, and it uses Apache to forward every request to here. So this is the folder that will face the internet. Resources here, so this is where you would add your CSS, JavaScript. They offer this great thing for language. So if you have authentication with your pages, this is an English table, and you can change how these lines are given to the not to the user, to the individual. So if you have a website that faces globally, you can use this folder to help change how the validation language looks. And this is the only view you have right now. So when we started up our server, this is what was shown to us. So Laravel has a templating engine called Blade. You're not required to use it, but it's a great tool to use. But you can see as you go through here, these at and then the logic is what Blade uses to figure out what you want in the file. So yeah, that's pretty much it with how that works. Definitely look through the documentation. There's a Blade directive for pretty much anything that you can think of. If there's not something, it's really easy just to create your own. All right, routes. So what this folder is, I've only mainly used the API in the web. So this is where you set up your routes. Now you can set the routes just like this, where it returns the view to the user. But once your website gets complicated, you can start to add routes that point to controllers. And those controllers can be classes and handle every single route for, let's say you have a person tab. You can create this / with person, and you can have it so that everything for person is handled by this one class. But like I said, check the documentation for that. There's so many things that you can do and that you don't have to do with Laravel. It's great. Storage, that's just, Laravel has this whole thing to store like images if you want them on the website with it. They have a lot of documentation to show how to create symbolic links. So if you want to store your images and whatever at a different place on the server, you can create these symbolic links so that Laravel knows where to look to present the images to a user. Tests, this is where you can create tests to run and make sure that your website's functioning correctly, like inputs, and make sure that nobody can run SQL injection or do anything like that to you. Outside of that, all these others I don't really interact with. If you are somebody that plays around with Webpack, you can mess around with it in here. Mix is a library that's provided with Laravel. It's awesome if you want to add your CSS libraries like Tailwind. Tailwind has a whole thing on how you can add their library, and it'll tree shake everything to only put the classes needed in it. So Mix is a powerful tool to help compress all of your JavaScript, CSS, everything that you need to use. So before this video is over, I'm just going to show you how to migrate a database so you can just see how it works, and we'll go from there. So what I want to do here is I'm going to create database name, call it my first database, username, we'll say Corey, and then password as password. Obviously don't really use those values, but just for the sake of this, it makes it easy. So what I'm going to do is log into my SQL instance, if it'll let me. There we go. All right, so we are creating the user. So what you're going to do is create user. and my username I came up with was Corey at localhost, and then what you'll do is identified by, and the password I'm going to give is password. So hit enter there. You'll know that queries are working okay when they say query okay. I'm pointing at my screen like you can see it. But now we need to grant permissions. So for testing's sake and how Laravel works, I always just grant all permissions on it. You're giving Laravel access to the database to this specific table. So it's not going to have unlimited access to your entire MySQL database. But how this works is MyFirstDB and the .star means all tables that are created inside MyFirstDB. And then we do Corey at localhost. Grant all privileges on. I love that about MySQL. It never lets you actually know, but I'm pretty sure that's it. I guess we'll find out together, right? Localhost. Alright, grant all privileges on MyFirstDB to Corey at my localhost. Maybe I spelled something wrong here. Grant all privileges on MyFirstDB.star to Corey at localhost. Okay, what's going on here? It's always great when it works off camera, but when you're on camera, it doesn't want to work. Alright, let's see here. Create user, Corey at localhost, identify by password. Create database, MyFirstDB. Let me copy that there. Grant all privileges on MyFirstDB.star to Corey @ localhost. Alright, I'm going to look into this real quick and see what I am breaking. Alright, you find out the weirdest things when you turn the camera off and you're like, oh, that's it. So if you see over here, it's grant all privileges. I had the database's name in quotes, and apparently MySQL doesn't like that, so it's just the way it is with there. But now all's well in the world. The last thing I'm going to run is flush privileges, and that just pushes every privilege out there that was given. It's not really required, but everything I've read and every way I've learned, MySQL, just run it just in case. I'm going to exit out of that. Go over here, make sure we're in that directory, and we will run PHP artisan. I just like to run serve just to make sure artisan's working, and then PHP artisan migrate. It migrated all of this for us. We go over here. I'm going to go back into MySQL. All right, and we're going to use MyFirstDB, and then we will do describe tables. Show tables. Now, as we see here, it'll keep a log of all failed jobs, all migrations, password resets, personal access tokens. So Laravel has this built into it where you can assign access tokens for people for login sessions and then users. So describe users. As you can see, it set all of this up for us just by running those migration tables. And let's see if I can open it up here. Migrations, create user. Through this abstraction and through Eloquent, we were able just to write it easy like this, and then it writes all the SQL for us. So Laravel's a powerful tool. I definitely recommend if you're looking for something to use in your next project, you can't go wrong with Laravel. But just look into everything that it has to offer, and if you like the video, please hit that like button, and if you want more content, please feel free to subscribe, and I hope you have a good evening.